All right, all right. Happy Thursday. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. I have a special guest with me tonight. His name is Adam Collinge. He is an organizer for student loan justice. Alan, thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, Sabrina. Glad to be with you.
So, Alan, I think it's interesting because when I invited you on, we did not have the news that just broke today. So it just happens to have worked out that you're coming on tonight when this news broke. But I do want to start with the Student Loan Justice Organization. Why did you decide to start that organization, and what made you so passionate about student loan debt to begin with?
Yeah, I had my own student loans, and still do today. I graduated like 1998 or 9 or so, and my own loans got thrown into default despite my best efforts to keep them in good stead. And at the time, I was an aeronautical scientist at Caltech after leaving that job. And interestingly, I went into banking. I went into federal banking for the Department of Transportation. And what I saw happen with my own student loans was an alarm bell. I realized immediately after I had sort of learned a little bit about the banking industry and good faith loans and so on and so forth. I realized that something had gone horribly wrong with the federal student loan program. So I started doing some research, and what I found was just jaw-dropping, the collusion, the corruption, and I wound up taking my research to 60 Minutes, and I wound up being featured top story in 2006, and it was a kind of a big deal back at the time. Unfortunately, I thought, okay, well, that's mission accomplished, and that was 16 years ago now. So unfortunately, this lending scam, and it is a scam through and through, has only gotten worse since those long ago days. And the battle still continues. This lending system is it is a mess. It is a monstrous, weaponized scam. And I hope we can talk about that a little later.
Yes, indeed. I first want to start with the news that broke today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for this. For those who are not aware, there has been a change in the student loan forgiveness plan that the Biden administration did announce. And I want to share this with everyone. Biden administration scales back student loan forgiveness plan as states sue. So I want to share a little bit of this article here. The Biden administration scaled back eligibility for its student loan forgiveness plan Thursday. That was today. The same day, 6 Republican-led states sued President Joe Biden in an effort to block his student loan forgiveness plan from taking effect. Borrowers whose federal student loans are guaranteed by the government but held private lenders will now be excluded from receiving debt relief. Around 770,000 people will be affected by the change. Now, that's according to an administration official. The Department of Education initially said these loans, many of which made under the former Federal Family Education Plan program and federal Perkins loan program, would be eligible for one-time forgiveness action as long as the borrower consolidated his or her debt into the federal direct loan program. On Thursday, the department reversed course. According to its website, privately held federal student loans must have been consolidated before September 29th, which is today, in order to be eligible for the debt relief. So now we see there is a change here. And one more piece I want to mention. Borrowers with privately held federal student loans represent a small portion of 43 million federal student loan borrowers. There are about 4 million borrowers with the federal family education loans, but not all of those people are likely to be eligible for the loan forgiveness plan, which also includes an income requirement. Alan, I want to get your take on this because, like I said, this news broke today, and we've been talking about student loans, I'd say, for like the past, I don't know, 4 weeks on this show. And I know some people have already reached out to me. That's how I found out about this, reached out to me today to let me know that they are now no longer eligible. So I want to get your take on this.
Yeah, our group actually started the petition back in March 2020, calling on the president to cancel student loans by executive order. This is way before anybody was talking about it. So you'd think we'd be thrilled that Biden came out and announced this loan cancellation. But, Sabrina, we knew that this plan was going to be fraught with problems and say one thing, do another, that it would be weakened and weakened and weakened. And then, well after the election, people would realize, hey, this thing sucks. And quite frankly, $10,000 or $20,000 loan forgiveness, that does very little for the people who have been hurt worse by these loans. We have people who borrowed, $25,000, who have repaid $100,000 on a $25,000 loan, still owe, $130,000. That's the sort of predatory abuse that we're seeing. So from the get-go, $10,000 or even $20,000 doesn't do a whole lot for the people worst hurt. And that news that you just mentioned that just dropped today, that's just one of many shoes to drop that will weaken and weaken and weaken this loan cancellation plan. After all the bureaucrats get done bureaucratizing this thing to death, I said it months ago that whatever Biden comes out with, as long as the threat of bankruptcy remains gone, I'll talk about that in a minute. But whatever we see Biden do is probably going to wind up ultimately coming to mean almost nothing for almost everyone and absolutely nothing for many. And I should say, people that have these FFELP loans, they tend to be older borrowers who borrowed money decades and decades ago. They probably owe hundreds of thousands of dollars despite borrowing a tiny fraction of that many decades ago. So these are the worst hurt people, and they are like all the pandemic stimulus. They are out in the cold, left out in the lurch. And, it's disgusting and it's obscene.
That's right. That's right. For those who are just joining, we were just talking about the news that broke today in reference to the student loan forgiveness plan, that now there has been a change, and basically people who had federal student loans, but they were held by private lenders, will now be excluded from that debt relief. So unless they had consolidated those loans before today, which obviously this news broke today, so it's already too late for them to go ahead and do that. And I want to get your take on the student loan industry altogether, because I've called out organizations like Sallie Mae over a year ago as a predatory lender. And I found out about their practices about 3 years ago. They actually came to Boston University. A couple of their representatives spoke to a student group that we were working with at that time that was going to work with them on a project. And one of their representatives made the mistake of saying, well, we have people on the Hill that make sure that people like us stay in place. And they were talking about predatory lenders like Sallie Mae. So that was a big turnoff to the students, obviously, and also to me. And that right there let me know like what they're really all about here. And you have people in DC that are working to keep them in place. So even when Joe Biden promised to cancel this $10,000 to $20,000 student loan debt, I said, watch, there is going to be a catch, because they always make these promises to us. And then there's always something that was either unchecked or a loophole that they were able to, or they weren't paying attention to, that is going to make it less than what it already is.
You hit it right on the head. And I can only hope that people are starting to wise up to this lending scam. There's no other loan in this country from which bankruptcy protections have been removed. Statutes of limitations have been taken away. Truth in lending laws, fair debt collection practice laws, all these consumer protections have been taken away from federal student loans. And the lending industry, Sallie Mae, Navient, all the whole laundry list, up to and including the federal government, by the way. The Department of Education owns the majority of these loans now, and they are partners in crime with these for-profit and sometimes non-profit entities. The lending system is a catastrophic failure at this point. It's predatory, it's abusive, and by the way, almost every penny of federal student loans could be canceled tomorrow, and the taxpayers would be breaking about even. They have been making a massive profit on this scam for decades and decades and decades. You know, the founding fathers called for uniform bankruptcy laws in the Constitution, and they took this away from student loans. And you take away bankruptcy and you take away statute of limitations, well, you can follow borrowers for the rest of their lives. And when you can snag their Social Security income, their disability income, you can garnish their wages without a court order. These are licenses to steal. And that is what has happened. Now, thankfully, Sabrina, I have to say, I've found my sense of humor about this over the past 3 years, because the numbers at this point are so freakishly just outrageous. The lending system is toast. It's finished. It's done. There's no saving it, and there should be no saving it, no matter how hard the people in Washington, D.C. try. You know, even before the pandemic, more than half of all borrowers had stopped paying. They can't pay, unable to pay, refuse to pay, whatever you want to call it. The default rate, even before the pandemic, was 40%, but that was for 2004 students. And they were borrowing a third as much as what's being borrowed today. So everybody walking around with student loans right now, I think the default rate is going to be something like 70, 75%. And even the guy who ran the federal lending program before the pandemic, again, he was a Trump appointee, a Republican. He said that 85% of all borrowers were underwater on their loans. So more than half, we already know, were not paying at all. And another 5% were paying and paying and paying, but their loan balances were going up and not down. So this lending system is finished. You know, January 1st is going to come, and maybe 20% of the people will resume paying. I think it's going to be even lower than that, though. Mm-hmm. You know, we're in uncharted territory. Lending systems fail from time to time historically, but we haven't seen anything quite this big since like the subprime home mortgage crisis. But this is a little different from subprimes. But anyways, yeah, the lending system is just toast, and nobody knows how this is going to go.
Yeah, it's a good point. Something too that I've noticed, if you talk to people that attended college, like maybe in the 70s, and they took out student loans, they do not have anywhere near as much student loan debt that we have, like at least for my generation. Those of us are millennials, and I'd say for the Gen Z students as well. They didn't have to borrow as much money because college wasn't as expensive. Right. Some of them were able to work a part-time job to pay for like their books, help pay for part of their tuition. I had a part-time job in college that was never enough money to cover my tuition. And then you were only allowed to work a certain number of hours a week, especially if you had work study. They would only give you so many hours a week. So it was never enough to even put towards the tuition portion. It was enough to put towards some of my books, but not like all of it. But when we talk about the scam aspect of the student loan industry, I really like to point to the interest rates as a big problem, because I'm talking to people over the years who maybe had like $40,000 of student loan debt, and they had already paid like $35,000 of their student loan debt, and they're still telling me they still owe $40,000. And I feel like that's part of the scam portion. Like, they must have increased the interest rates over time, because a lot of the people that said they did take out student loans like back during the 70s, it wasn't to the amounts that we had, or the interest was not as high. And I want to get your opinion about that.
Yeah, that's right. And, you know, I might even add, when they created the Higher Education Act, when they passed the Higher Education Act, 1965, and created the federal student loan program for all intents and purposes, they declared that the loans would be free of interest. That's what they said. Now, today, about $100 billion a year in interest alone clicks off on the federal student loan portfolio. So that $1.6 trillion that we hear about, or 7 or 8 or whatever it is, that is almost all interest penalties and fees. It's not unpaid principal. So when people say, oh, it's going to cost the taxpayers all this money to cancel the loans, no, it's not. That's nonsense. The taxpayers will be breaking about even if all the loans were canceled tomorrow. But, the interest rate is not good. And it's getting worse, by the way. As the prime rate and LIBOR rises, so too will the interest rates on student loans going forward. But, it's not just the interest. It's also the fees. A lot of people like to consolidate their loans, consolidation fees. If you fall into default on your loans, which the vast majority of people are going to do right now. Yep. Everybody with student loans right now, the vast majority will wind up in default based on all the numbers that we're seeing. That is where they can really turn a $30,000 loan into a $150,000 monstrosity. And I have to say, Sabrina, I think that's more a feature than a bug. I think this was planned. I think there are people in Washington, D.C. who love stealing money from the citizenry. I mean, that's what this is. It's legalized theft. If what they were doing with student loans, if they did with any other commercial loan from Wall Street, those people would be locked up and thrown in prison. It is just absolutely insane, the sort of abuse that we're seeing these days. We have people who borrowed, you name it, a $50,000 loan. People have repaid $150,000 or $200,000, still owe, $200,000 on the loans. Those are the sorts of numbers we're seeing. And this Biden student loan cancellation, even if it was exactly everything it was billed to be, it would do nothing to solve this problem.
I also felt like it's a ploy to get people to join the military industrial complex too. I remember when I was an undergrad, the recruiters heavily came to my campus and would tell students, if you join the military when you graduate, guess what? We'll pay off your student loan debt. And so I had friends that did that only for that reason, not because they necessarily wanted to fight for their country, but because they wanted that student loan debt paid off. And they're like, this is a guaranteed employment. I don't have to really go out and look for a job, and they're going to take care of my college debt. So that was a big factor, I would say, for the armed forces, trying to get those college students, recruit them, and then even offer to them, well, since you have a college degree, you'll start off at a higher rank than someone joining the military right out of high school. So that's another aspect. I feel like they realized that military recruitment was going to decrease at some point in time because you started to have more people going to college. So what better way to get more people recruited into the military industrial complex than to offer to pay off their student loans?
Yeah, it's coercion in many different ways. And I should say, we have so many veterans in our group. We've got over 1 million people in our group at this point, and there is a very significant spike in veterans. So people who, they got the GI Bill, but I'm telling you, the GI Bill does not go as far as it used to. And some of the worst colleges, they target veterans. They're like, hey, you just got out of the service? Hey, why don't you come to our, pardon my French, shitty college and get a nonsense degree that sounds good, but it's not. Or sometimes even active duty, they go off on deployment and their wife, their husband, significant other, don't take care of things for them, and their loans wind up in default. I don't know. There's a lot of different factors going on there, but I can tell you that our service men and women, including mostly veterans, are being wrecked worse than most people by these loans.
Agreed. I want to get your take about the employers as well, because I did notice that something happened around 2008 during the housing crisis. All of a sudden, these entry-level positions, which a lot of us just graduated from college, we typically would have been eligible for those positions. The requirements changed. It went from all you need to have is a bachelor's degree to get this position to you need to have a bachelor's degree and 3 to 5 years of experience. So what ends up happening was, especially during that time, during that housing crisis, people were afraid to quit their jobs. So people that were at retirement age that could retire were like, I better hold on to this position because the economy is in the pits. So then what happened was you had people that were Gen Xers, so to speak. They were getting those entry-level jobs that technically those of us who are millennials graduating from college, we should have been eligible for those jobs. So since they had those jobs and they had years of experience, that actually increased the experience requirement for those entry level positions. And I worked with college students for years, for over a decade. And now it's even higher. Now they're asking these kids to have 5 years of experience. So now you have kids graduating from undergrad and they're like, well, I need to go to grad school to get a higher degree. That's another way to bypass it. But you accumulate more student loan debt, and the wages that they're offering these recent graduates are not enough for them to live off of on their own. A lot of these kids have 3 and 4 roommates and they have college degrees. So I feel like it seems like all of these pieces have been working together.
Yeah, they absolutely have been. And, you know, the vast majority of people who got caught in the 2008 bad economy, vast majority of them owe more today than they did back in 2008 on their student loans. Yep. It cannot continue. It can't. And as I said, I've kind of found a sense of humor at this point because the lending system is off a cliff. If even 20% of the people resume paying on their loans come January, that'll be pretty surprising. You know, lending systems fail from time to time, and this one is way past failed. It's done. Hey, one very important thing, we've got to return bankruptcy protections to these loans because when January does start, and nobody wants to file for bankruptcy, I get that. But stripping bankruptcy away lies at the core of this scam. And the only way that we're going to see any kind of fairness, fair administration, good faith loan administration for these loans is when we, the people, have the leverage of bankruptcy back on our side, just like it is for every other type of loan, for every other type of borrower. So that's the core focus of our group. And I'm very glad to say that today, a bill dropped in the House of Representatives. I don't have a number for you yet. It doesn't have one, probably won't until tomorrow, but this is a companion bill for a Senate bill, S-2598. So I am guardedly hopeful that we can get the Democrats, who have a historically rare control of both House, Senate, and presidency right now. That hasn't happened since Obama. I'm guardedly hopeful that, and it's a bipartisan bill, guardedly hopeful that we can maybe push this bill through, ideally before November 8th for political purposes, but by the end of the year, I think we've got a really good shot.
Yeah, it's this is what I like to tell people also about the activism on the outside. So Alan is a part of the Student Loan Justice Organization. They put a lot of pressure on the politicians. So I know, Alan, you've been fighting about this for years. Like, you've been talking about this for a long time before this was even, I guess I would say, a popular conversation, so to speak. So you had already seen what was happening. I was at an event recently called Camp Data, and we had a debt burning event. Right. And everyone that stood up to speak, it was student loan debt, I think, except for one person. And it just goes to show you how this debt has really put a weight on people's lives. And I don't think, for people who did not have to take this on, they don't really understand.
You know, people who never had student loans, or maybe who paid off their student loans years or decades ago, they have no idea. People who went to college in the 70s, that's chump change. You know, used to be in the 70s, you could, you know, work a part-time job over the summer and pay your tuition. Yep. We're in a different reality today, and people need to understand that this is not a bad borrower problem. You can wag your finger at the borrowers all you want, and that's not going to change the fact that this lending system is failed, and it's not the borrowers that crushed this lending system. You know, I like to say, we didn't break this lending system, we the borrowers. This lending system tried to break us, and we're not doing it. I think the people are far stronger than the people in Washington, D.C. give us credit for.
I agree. And I want to get your opinion about the Debt Collective. They have been pretty vocal on Twitter, and I've seen them on other shows as well. They are asking people come January not to start paying back their student loans. And I want to get your opinion about that.
Well, I think that's inevitable at this point. And in my humble opinion, no one should ever pay another dollar into this beast. It doesn't help them. It doesn't help the country. It doesn't help the people in Washington, D.C. It does nobody any good to pay into this lending beast. Don't feed it. This is a lending beast that should be taken to the bath and drowned in the tub, quite frankly. And, Debt Collective likes to call it a strike. We're not talking about a strike here. We're not like, oh, do something, and when our demands are met, we'll start paying again. No. This lending system is finished. There's no saving it, and there should be no saving it. The one thing that we differ from the Debt Collective on, and I don't know why, but they seem to be quiet on the bankruptcy issue. And, January 1st is rolling around, and the collection industry, at least on paper, they still have a lot of collection powers. And, people, I tell everybody to bulletproof themselves, get ready for January. But how much better it will be when January 1st rolls around and we have the leverage of bankruptcy back on our side. That is absolutely critical. But yeah, no, this call it a strike, call it whatever you want. I think strike's the wrong word. The lending system is vanishing into a mist of illegitimacy as we speak. Student loans are essentially dead. It's a dead man walking. The pandemic, I think, was the nail in the coffin.
I agree. The other thing I've wondered too, what happens to someone that has or still has student loan debt? And let's say that person passes away. What happens to that debt that is still owed? Like, what did the student loan companies do about that?
Well, federal student loan debt is discharged upon death. Private student loans, the cosigners typically are still held on the hook. But let's not let our passing be how we solve our student loan problem, shall we?
Right, but it to the point, it shows that they can charge it off.
They can, and they do. The president has all the executive authority, and the secretary, all the executive authority they need to waive, compromise, and release the federal interest in these loans. President Biden could cancel every nickel of federally owned student loans. That's around 87% of all student loan debt. He wouldn't, and unlike PPP loans, he wouldn't need one dime from the Treasury. You wouldn't have to print any money. You wouldn't add even a penny to the national debt, and not $1 would be injected into the economy to cause inflation. So all the haters out there, these are swamp creatures in Washington, D.C. that are trying to protect their cash cow. They are just full of nonsense. And I think people are smarter than that. I hope you can see through it. I hope everybody out there will see through this Washington, D.C. and Wall Street spin that the media has been overtaken by.
Do you think there should be some type of action towards universities for price gouging in reference to tuition as well? Because that's the one piece I think that is not being addressed as much, is that, yes, I think we should cancel all student loan debt, but at the same time, these universities are increasing tuition every year. I'll give you an example of local colleges here. Boston University is more expensive to attend than Harvard University now. It's like $65,000 to go there. It's ridiculous. University of Massachusetts is almost $30,000 a year. That's a state school. So they're continuing to increase the tuition. And at the same time, these kids in high school are like, well, I have to go to college if I want to have a good job. But do you think that's necessarily true? Because I've seen people just attend like 2 years of community college. They'll become a dental hygienist, very little debt, and sometimes given grants to go to the community college. And they're making more than some of the students that are graduating with a bachelor's degree.
Yeah, I think just generally college is a little bit oversold to the kids. Everybody has it drilled into them from a young age. Oh, go to college. You want to be somebody, go to college. It's oversold. It's extremely overpriced. And despite what the colleges may say, they love to cry poor. They're like, oh, state cut our funding. That's nonsense. Colleges are more awash in cash today than they have ever been in the history of colleges in this country. By the way, our bankruptcy bill I mentioned earlier, there's a clawback provision in it, which requires the colleges to reimburse the lenders, and federal government, in the case of a bankruptcy discharge. So it's not a huge amount, but it's a little bit of a slap on the wrist. I think certainly the colleges need to bear some liability, and they need to have some skin in the game. But, if I was president, I would suspend the lending program indefinitely, i.e. forever. I would maybe put the colleges on direct reduced funding, like 70% what they got last year for a year. I would recreate the entire higher education financing system. And that's really what needs to happen in an ideal world. That's what would happen. But for the bad politics in Washington, D.C., that's what would be happening.
What do you say to people who feel that if we made public colleges free, then the degree wouldn't have the same value? And I argue against that because I point to a country like Germany where college is free and they have some of the best engineers in the world. So I disagree with that statement. But they will argue that some of these other colleges, like the private universities, like the Harvards and the Yale, that they wouldn't have good attendance. And I want to get your opinion about that it would hurt the education system, so to speak.
Oh, I think that's propaganda seeded by the colleges themselves, quite frankly. And it's like you said, look at almost every first world country in Europe. Look at China, look at, even some second world countries, Cuba, Mexico, Venezuela. College is free in most countries on earth at this point, certainly public colleges. There's no good reason that we the supposedly the richest, most powerful country in the world can't find a way to educate our citizens, if not completely free, at least, free tuition at a minimum for public colleges and universities. The college industrial complex, they love this government lending scam. It's their cash cow.
Yes. And then the way that they use the resources at universities as well. Like I like to call them sports schools. I went to a SEC school, University of South Carolina, heavily into sports, football, basketball team. Like there's a lot of money put into that. Some of these coaches at these colleges are making over $1 million a year. So you have to ask, like, why is there no accountability with the way that these universities choose to spend the funds that come into the university?
I know, it's like I said, that the colleges are essentially given a license to steal. Not only through the lending program, but there's other ways that colleges make money through land acquisition and sales, so forth. And just look at any college, including community colleges all over the country. You drive past your local college and you'll probably see 1, 2, 3 construction cranes because they're building, baby. They are building, climbing rock walls in Class A architecture and all these things that have nothing to do with teaching and learning.
That's right.
So that's maybe another discussion. Right. I could go on for a while, though. The college endowments have grown to just obscene proportions. And beyond the endowments, by the way, the colleges for the past 15 years have begun socking away money separate from their endowments. Some of them are even putting their money in, Panama bank accounts and so forth. But there's a lot of sort of outside the endowment wealth that the colleges have collectively accrued. And we're talking hundreds of billions of dollars.
That's right. How do you feel about some of these alternative higher ed programs that have started to emerge, like Launch Academy? General Assembly is a big one. They have like a 98% job placement rate. You don't have to leave your home to attend General Assembly. It doesn't take you 4 years to get that degree, probably about 2.5 years, and it costs less. Do you think that's going to be the way of the future, these alternative options?
Yeah, it's hard to say. Certainly, driven people can educate themselves anywhere, anytime, if they really want to learn. That's always been true. The problem I see with some of the free or maybe, very low cost online, sit in your living room and number one, it's the testing, because it's very hard to test for those things in a rigorous way. And number two, there's just the prestige factor. Like we see these billionaires, Peter Thiel, Mark Cuban, and others saying, "Oh, don't go to college. just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And meanwhile, look at their kids. Their kids are going to Yale, Princeton, Harvard. So I think there's always going to be that sort of thing going on as well. But certainly what I can tell you, Sabrina, is that the current higher education funding model is broken beyond repair. And quite frankly, I don't even see the federal lending program even existing in 2 to 3 years. When nobody's paying, does it really exist? I don't think so.
That's a good point. And the point that you mentioned too about bankruptcy, I do want to remind everyone that Joe Biden is the reason why you cannot file for bankruptcy for your student loans, because he's the one who wrote that bill. This is why you can't, if you get into some type of financial situation, you can defer, or you can apply for a deferment and hope that goes through, but you cannot file bankruptcy on student loan debt. So it's almost like it really is a weight for people that's pulling a lot of people down.
Very true. Joe Biden, in fact, of all serving federal politicians alive today, Joe Biden probably deserves more credit than any living human for removing bankruptcy protections from student loans. This goes back to 1977 as a junior senator. And, he's got a lot to atone for. And I would hope the DNC, to their credit, has included returning bankruptcy to student loans in their party platform. So 2020, 2016. So the Democrats have a promise they need to keep to the citizens. This $10,000 loan cancellation is not that. They pledged to return bankruptcy. They are in a perfect position to do that. We have a bipartisan bill. We have Republican senators from Texas, Josh Hawley in Missouri, Matt Gaetz in Florida, who most Democrats hate that guy. He is for returning bankruptcy to student loans. So there's absolutely no excuse that our Congress can't return this floor of fairness that is bankruptcy rights. And by the way, very few people should even have to file. It's just having bankruptcy back on the table that will force the lenders to behave in good faith, rein in the colleges, all these good things that keep a lending program stable and rational and keep prices low and all the good things that we need to see. That will happen when bankruptcy comes back.
Well said. Well, Alan, thank you so much for joining me. Before you go, where can people find you?
Studentloanjustice.org. And maybe if they can sign our petition, change.org/cancel student loans. Just Google us. We're pretty much everywhere.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on, Alan, and educating all of us.
Thank you, Sabrina. I enjoyed it.
Bye. All right, guys. Very informative there. Very informative. Again, if you missed it, you'll get a chance to start back from the beginning of the stream so you can see that new update that came through today about the student loan cancellation, which is, a lot of people are not going to be happy about that. So really quick, I do want to shout out patrons. Then we'll get into our stories, our other stories for tonight. So let's go ahead and do that. All right. Shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much for your support. If you're interested in being a patron, I have 5 categories: members, Sabbies, Sabsters, Sabinators, and of course, the ultimate. All of their names are listed here. And you can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker as well. Thank you guys so much. Quick, huge shout out to you guys. Whoop, 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 whoop. All right. Let's go ahead to that thumbnail. I want to show you the other stories we're going to discuss tonight. And don't forget, tonight after the stream, we do have call-in. So that is going to be an interesting discussion after what I show you tonight. So what are we talking about tonight? We are discussing Russell Brand is censored. Yes, they actually came after the Russell. You're not going to believe this. I'm going to get into that story, and he is taking action, which I don't blame him. We're also going to discuss Jamaal Bowman is called out publicly in front of a room of people. We're going to dive deep into that story. And I'm going to discuss General Motors staff rise up. What did they do and how is the company responding? And of course, Alan Collinge was just here with the Student Loan Justice Organization. So let's get to some comments and then we'll get to our next story. Gamer said financial aid forms are a huge pain in the butt to fill out. They are. Yes, they are, Gamer. Sylvia says my loan was from a bank. I live in Alabama, and I'll bet my state would be one of the states that refused to go along with it. Peggy, I've been paying on this loan since the 90s, and I sure as hell didn't sell it to Navient. The government did. Previously, it was a direct loan, and then Navient got it, and it became a privately held loan. Navient. Sally Mae also goes by Navient too. See, they're tricky. They can switch names. They do this thing. Sebastian, remember Biden voted for the bankruptcy bill in 2005, and that allowed this to happen. Correct. Shout out to Mila Rose. Just found this stream I like. Welcome and greetings, Mila. And shout out to JVB for the tip on Rockfin. Thank you so much for that. So let's go ahead and get into our next story. This is about, Lucy, Blue Moon Red Wine's here. She said, yay, Alan. We're getting into this story about General Motors. Now, General Motors has come under fire multiple times. Perhaps the most notable expression towards them was done by Ralph Nader. He fought back against General Motors. I believe that was back in the 70s. So they're still doing what they do. And this time their employees have decided to push back against them about a different issue. So a quick shout out to Case Study QB here for this clip. Case is always doing the thing. Wait till you hear this. And then we have an article we're going to get into about this as well. So what did General Motors do? And what did their employees say?
GM delaying its return to office policy following a white-collar employee revolt. On Friday, GM actually told corporate workers they needed to be back in the office at least 3 days a week beginning later this year. But now they're walking that back, saying the return to office won't be necessary until sometime in the first quarter of 2023 at the earliest. GM delaying its return to office policy following a white-collar employee revolt. On Friday, GM actually told corporate workers they needed to be back in the office at least 3 days a week beginning later this year. But now they're walking that back, saying the return to office won't be necessary until sometime in the first quarter of 2023 at the earliest.
Okay, so GM tried to put pressure on their employees to come back into the office. I like how he called it a white collar revolt. But the employees were like, nah, we're not having that. We are not having that. I want to get into this article here. GM steps back on new return to office policy after backlash from salaried workers. Can't make this up. You see what happens when you have strength in numbers? General Motors is stepping back a bit on a return to work policy it revealed to salary employees last week. Make this a little bit larger for you. On Tuesday, CEO Mary Barra sent out a note to salary workforce offering an apology of sorts for the timing of putting out a new policy late in the day Friday, saying that employees would have to return to working in the office 3 days a week. She said, now that GM's plan still will include a more regular in-person presence, but it will not implement any changes to its return to the office policy this year as the company continues to listen to employee feedback. The plan still will ask employees to work in the office 3 days each week. The initial letter was a notification, and the purpose of the update is to provide clarification and additional details. That's coming from GM spokeswoman. The timing has shifted slightly. However, the overall plan has not changed. Now, I got to jump in here and I got to say this as someone who was working remotely for quite a while after the pandemic started. If your employees have been working remotely all this time, especially for over a year, why do you need to bring them back now? Why? When gas prices are still high. Someone just showed me a picture earlier today of gas prices in California over $8 a gallon. Why do you need them to come back now? All this time they've been working home, apparently doing just well, doing okay. Why do you need them to come back into work? I never understood that. They did the same thing when I was at Boston University. They were like, you guys have to come back in. The students need you. They tried to get us to come back during the summer. And I'm like, the students aren't even here. We need to have a presence. A present for who? A presence for you? A presence for the deans? A presence for the president of the university? Who do we need to have this presence for? It was really weird. So yeah, a lot of people quit. As you can bet. We've been working from home like for over a year, you guys. Over a year. And they're like, you need to come back June. Nobody's there. Didn't make any sense. Let's go back in. In Tuesday's note to employees, which was obtained by Free Press, Barra wrote, we want to take the opportunity to address some of the questions, concerns, and misconceptions that we've heard. We acknowledge that the timing of this message late on Friday afternoon was unfortunate. It was also unintentional. GM will communicate more information on its plan next month. GM faced immediate, look at this. They faced immediate resistance. Their employees said, hell no, we won't go. Hell no, we won't go. Faced immediate resistance from some salaried employees over the new mandate it put forth late Friday. GM had initially said that policy would start later this year. Some GM employees told the Free Press that the news blindsided them. You can probably imagine what the general mood is. That's coming from a salary employee. This worker asked to not be named for fear of retaliation for speaking to the news media. The company has been talking a good game about work appropriately since this all began, and we were completely blindsided by this news. For the past 24 months, many salaried employees either worked totally remote during the pandemic or worked a hybrid type model called Work Appropriately, which was introduced after the pandemic subsided. It allowed flexibility between working at the office or working remotely, letting employees and their manager decide where they could best do their specific jobs. Now, I want you to note something here, the past 24 months. So these employees were working remotely for 2 years. Do you know how difficult it is to get someone out of that routine? 2 years. You're used to just making your own breakfast, making your own lunch at home. If you got time, throwing a load of laundry, a little bit more freedom, not having to deal with the commute. 2 years you've been doing that. And now they say, all right, you guys got to come back in. Oh, no. That does not work. Now, it goes on to say here, collaborate with employees. In Tuesday's note to the white collar workforce, Barr wrote, our plan was always and still is to collaboratively design the solution that best balances the needs of the enterprise. They called it the enterprise. She actually called it the enterprise. Here we go. With the needs of each of you. The solution will include a more regular in-person presence. However, determining how, when, and where teams will increase their in-person collaboration ultimately will be designed by the people, leaders who know their organization best. We do not plan to mandate which days of the week will be collaborative days. In no scenario will our work appropriately evolution begin before Q1 2023. And then she goes on to say, that she provided clarification. And then here she says, we understand our employees have concerns and are committed to maintaining flexibility to ensure they can attend to personal commitments. As we implement this change, we are listening to employee feedback and we'll incorporate it in our planning. Do you see what happens when the people come together? The workers, you still have power. You still have power. Utilize it. Because this still isn't over. I don't know, the companies, I'm hearing this on Fox News are saying, oh, well, the companies have their power back again. You still have leverage when you work together. And so what was their reasoning for doing this? I do want to highlight this as well. Over time, we have lost some of the important intangible benefits of regularly working together in person, including casual mentoring. Okay. You can do that remotely. Next, more efficient communication and bringing an enterprise mindset to our work. You see this right here? This is really what it's about. More efficient communication. You can communicate still virtually, but it's this piece here. This is what they're really concerned about. Bringing an enterprise mindset to our work. It's all about the enterprise. This is why I laugh when companies say that we have work-life balance. Nah. Usually when they say that, there really isn't any work-life balance. Not really. Not really. So that's what it's really about. It's about the needs for the company and what works out best for the company. So shout out again to Case Study for amplifying that, because I don't know. I love these worker stories. So every time you hear about these, email these to me. I know you guys have sent me some things as well. Email them to me. If you can DM me, DM those to me as well. Because I love to highlight that, because I still want people to understand the workers still do have some type of leverage when you work together, whether you have a union or not. See how quickly they had to walk back that statement? They were demanding them to come in. See how quickly they had to walk it back? All right, let's highlight this comment here on Rockfin. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger Meadows. Sabby, while we're figuring that out, we're going to have to see what we can do at the state level, be it through BI or putting heat on the state government. We need government jobs guarantee where 25% of wage can comfortably pay for local rent rates shown in the annual Out of Reach Project report. Have the wage go up by the same percent that local rents cost so they can pay it down. Please study abroad. I say this too, Roger, in reference to the student loan debt. If you can do so, and not everyone can, but if you can do so and you can attend college abroad in a country where college is free, and as an American, you can still do that, by the way, I highly recommend that's what you do. Don't get yourself in all these mounds of student loan debt. Just trust. Look, I still have student loan debt. Still have it. I go to some of the comments here. Cool Blue, did any of this happen with assembly workers? I think this particular story, it was the office employees, but good question. Where Pilgrim, unions in Canada are trying to work into their contracts that they get options to work from home and aren't penalized for doing so. Big ones like Unifor, etc. I think that should happen. Go for it. Lawrence, office parks have turned into deserts, empty building which might easily be converted into housing for homeless if they were funded. That's a good point. So if you look at these companies like Google and Facebook that have, some of them have told their employees, look, you can work from home indefinitely. Great. What are you doing with those office spaces? What are you doing with those buildings? If they're empty, you can utilize it for something else. Turn that building into an affordable housing complex. Turn it into housing for homeless. Do something else with the space that is actually going to benefit people in the community and actually help society. Good point, Lawrence. Jay, these environments are micromanaging cultures. The micromanagers are fighting for their lives if no I love it, Jay. This is spot on. These environments are micromanaging cultures. The micromanagers are fighting for their lives. If no one is in the office, they can't justify their own job. Bingo. Listen, I've said this before. When they first told us, when I was still at BU and they first told us we had to come back in and it was for the summer and we were like, why do we have to come in? There's no students there. I said it back then because they don't trust us, because they want to be able to watch what we do. They want to be able to see what we're doing. They want to micromanage. And when you're working from home, they can't always see you. That's what that's about. Isn't it crazy? Thanks for this tip on Rockfin. Also, Roger Meadows, workers, that's right to use whatever leverage you've got to get what you want. This is why they are purposely getting the Fed to crash the economy, to make unemployment go up, to make us desperate for anything. With the leverage goes back to the boss. That's right. It's not working out too well, though, Roger. We got to get this public banking legislation going to protect our state and local economies. Well said. Well said. Now, we've talked about student loan debt. We've talked about the workers leveraging their rights. And now we're going to go into a bit of a different topic, which is censorship. And I hate to go there, but we got to cover this story because this goes to show you they can try to take anyone down. And this time, they went after Russell Brand. Now, I want to remind you that Russell Brand has over 5 million subscribers on YouTube. I like his show. I don't know if you guys are into his show or not, but I talk about his show often on this show. But I like his show. I like the format of it. I like the guests that he brings on his show, whether I agree or disagree with them or not. I feel like they're good conversations that he has on the show. But they came after him too. And so things are changing. Because I did explain a couple of months ago, for the most part, they were going after smaller channels. Not so much anymore. So they went after Russell Brand. He made a video about it, him doing what he does. Let's get into that.
We have been officially censored by YouTube. They took down one of our videos for misinformation. But why are big media organizations not censored for misinformation in the same way? Is it because YouTube are part of the mainstream media now? Hello there, you 5.9 million awakening wonders. Thank you for...
Let's chime in here for just a second. Is that the case? Is it that YouTube is a part of mainstream media now? Now, we've been talking about this. We've talked about how they've pushed up CNN and MSNBC and Fox News in the YouTube algorithm. So it used to be if you search for Bernie Sanders, you would get these independent media outlet recommendations. Not so much anymore. It's the mainstream news is heavily pushed up in the algorithm. And those of us that do independent media, we are pushed down. And I'm going to show you an example of that after this video. I'm going to show you an example. Someone showed me this the other day and I showed it to Nick at RBN, but I'm going to show it to you guys tonight too. But let's hear what happened to Russell Brand and then we'll get into that.
Joining me on this voyage towards truth and freedom, where we embrace the light within. We overlook the superficial differences between us to form new unitary forces. And if you're going to be serious about making change, you're going to have to make it with us over on Rumble, where these videos are released first and where we stream every day live, 1 hour of content, absolutely free at 5 p.m. If you watch it streamed live, there's not even any adverts in it. There's a link in the description. Join us there every day. Now, we've got a fantastic story for you today about YouTube, about censorship, and about the future of this platform. Now, let's get into the story. Earlier this month, we did a video about the changing narratives around COVID, the pandemic, and COVID treatments, in which we cited information on official government websites, which we misinterpreted. I'll have to be careful talking about it now, because I don't want to make the same mistake that's had one of our videos pulled down and an official warning issued. The good news is we're moving to Rumble. All of our content is up on Rumble first, and we'll be streaming on Rumble every day. We know that Rumble has a reputation in some quarters for having certain particular biases that we are beyond. I'm interested in total transparent communication, empowerment of the audience, symbiotic two-way conversation, and attacking elite establishment, whether it's corporate or state, so that...
Did you hear what he just said? So Russell Brand has announced that going forward, and I think he's already done his Rumble stream, the first one. Russell Brand is going to be streaming on Rumble first. You guys see what's happening here? He's not going to be streaming on YouTube first anymore. He's going to be streaming on Rumble first and interacting with people over there first, and then maybe uploading a clip or so of that to YouTube. And this has been happening across the board. Like you guys saw what happened with Jackson Hinkle. Now, Jackson Hinkle and I don't agree on everything, but the one thing I think we both agree on is the censorship problem. And I said this before, you don't have to agree with Jackson Hinkle, but it was wrong for YouTube to demonetize him the way that they did. So what did he have to do? He had to switch. He's like, okay, I'm going to be doing all of my streams on Rumble where he's monetized over there as well. And then he also had to, come back and accept the sponsorship, because like you're demonetized, you're not making anything. You can't send super chat to people or anything. So we saw that happen with him. We saw this happen with Convo Couch. What was it, last January? For those that talked about or reported on what happened on January 6th, they were targeted. They were one of the ones, Frank Analysis, Convo Couch, the whole MCSC network. So what did they do? Convo Couch shifted and said, you can catch all of our deep streams, for example, if they want to talk more about certain issues that YouTube is going to censor. They were like, we're doing all that on Rockfin. And their audience, a lot of them, they followed them over on Rockfin. So this is happening more and more often. Now, I will say, those were smaller channels. I did not expect to see this happen to someone like Russell Brand. Again, last I checked, and I'll check it again, but last I checked, he had more subscribers than TYT did. But see, TYT is a part of the corporate algorithm. They're not going to touch them like that. You see the problem? This is why I'm on multiple platforms. What you see here, you can also see on my Rumble. You can see it on Rockfin. You can see it on Odyssey. Every live stream that I do here, it's uploaded on Rumble. It's also live on Rockfin, and it's uploaded on Odyssey. I don't stream live to Rumble because you have to pay to live stream on Rumble. That's why I don't stream live there. I just upload the stream after the fact. But if you want to switch, if you're one of those people that's like, look, I think I'm just going to only focus on Rumble, I'm over there too. Same channel name, Sabby Sabs. People ask me, why are you on all these platforms? This is why. Just in case. Just in case. Let's go back in.
Ordinary people can communicate freely beyond the limited remit of the mainstream media. That is why it's so convenient that this has happened at this time. We have been persecuted for misinformation, and it's right. We have a responsibility to make sure that the information we convey is absolutely 100% as accurate as it possibly could be. We made a mistake in saying that was now recommended by the NIH. What we should have said is they're trialing. That's what we should have said. You pointed that out to us. We made an apology video. We've taken that down as well. YouTube took down our original video. We've taken down the apology video because in case we reiterate the claim while apologizing for it, like if you said, I shouldn't have said that you look stupid in those shoes. You just said I look stupid in those shoes. You know, that kind of playground mad logic. So both of those videos you can watch right now on Rumble. They're still live on Rumble. That's the reason we're joining them, because they're not going to censor our content. And by the way, just so you know, I don't want the right to say mean things about people. I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in wars between different traditional or progressive factions. I support and love all of you. If you love Donald Trump, I love you. If you love Joe Biden, I love you. I want us to create new systems together. I don't believe these institutionalized systems at the level of the financial, governmental, or media world are ever going to serve ordinary people. I believe we're at a point of crisis and things need to radically change. fast. And I believe we'll be able to communicate our message more freely on Rumble. And this misinformation strike and takedown demonstrates exactly what it is we're talking about. We made an error, in my opinion, a relatively small error, and we're being penalized. For me, that looks like censorship. And the reason I think it looks like censorship is because there's mainstream media misinformation up all the time.
That's right. And I have to be careful about playing that part myself. But he's 100% right. Because if MSNBC or CNN or Fox News makes a mistake, their videos aren't removed. If they say incorrect information, their videos aren't removed. Their channels aren't taken down. This is the problem that a lot of people have been running into. And I will say, in reference to transparency and saying whatever you want to say, I'll show you the difference. There are things that I can say on Call-In that I can't say on here. So I tell people, follow me on Call-In. Just being real. There are things that I can say on Rumble and Rockfin that I can't say on here. This is why, like, there's certain topics, certain things I'm like, I have to use different words for it or disguise it in a certain way because of that, because of the censorship. So the fact, if they're going after someone who has, and someone pointed it out earlier, 5.9 million subscribers, where are you? I just saw you point that out. Where did you go? Darn, I lost you. You were here. This moves too fast. Anywho, if they can come after someone who has 5.9 million subscribers, everyone's fair game. Everyone. So let me go to this part because, like I said, I wanted to be careful about playing that Rachel part. Okay.
Shows that under real world conditions, not just in a lab, not just.
Uh-oh. There she goes again. She's still talking. Okay. Right about there.
You cannot spread the virus. Now, I think most of us know now that that's not true, but that video is up on YouTube right now. You can go and look at it on YouTube. We'll put a link in the description, although, in my opinion, that's misinformation. Because the truth is, the vaccine does not stop you spreading the disease. Does it? That was misinformation. Now, I'm not suggesting Rachel Maddow knew that at the time. I'm sure she was responding authentically to what she believed.
But they're not going to take that down because, again, like, that's what they want people. If they did remove that, that's them admitting that, wait a minute, we made a mistake here. They're not going to do that because they want people to think and to believe that mainstream media is always correct. Even when there's been times where it's been obvious that they have not been correct, where they've had to come back and retract statements before. But he's right. YouTube will not remove those videos. And Rachel Maddow was paid $30 million. So keep that in mind. The same woman who spread Russiagate, she's paid $30 million.
Is the truth as a responsible, good journalist. I don't think Rachel Maddow is a bad person. I'm saying that if it's misinformation for us to say on our channel that something was recommended by the NIH when it's been clinically trialed by the NIH, and it's very difficult to envisage that there are potentially negative medical consequences, let alone fatalities that could come from that, then get that shit down, because someone could watch this now. Oh wow, it prevents the spread. It prevents the spread. Right, let's go visit Grandma. Grandma, I love you, Granny. I love you. That's dangerous misinformation. So we're asking, is there one standard for independent news broadcasters like us on our channel, and a different standard for what we would call the mainstream media? Who funds the mainstream media again? Where do they get their information? Is it possible that YouTube has been colonized? Is it possible that YouTube, that began as a channel with the best intentions in the world, providing content creators the opportunity to put stuff out there, find their audience, be engaged with a discourse with their audience, a grand ambition. But is it possible that a company ultimately owned by Alphabet now dances to the tune of the mainstream media, dances to the tune of the establishment? Certainly in this instance, it would seem like it. Otherwise, how do you make sense of some misinformation being allowed, propagated, profligate misinformation, and other misinformation, and we'll accept it's misinformation, we made a mistake, being censored? That is...
Let's talk about that for a second, because I would say, is it necessarily like it's called YouTube, but is it really for you? Is it really, it used to be different. YouTube used to be a lot more free. Now, there's certain things you can't say, can't do. You can read an article from mainstream media or from the Center for Disease Control. And if it's not the narrative that they want people to hear, or if you're just simply saying it and you're independent, they'll take it down. They'll take it down. But it's okay for mainstream media to say it. So is YouTube still for the people, or is YouTube mainly for corporate news? Is it corporate now? And it's not just independent media. It's not just independent media that has been affected. I know I talk about that a lot because this is a space that I'm in, but I also know people that do vlogs as well. And I've done vlogs before in the past. They've also been censored, depending on what they're showing, like during their vlog. So it's not just independent media, but is there a different standard? And I would say, yes, there actually is. There's a different set of standards. How else can you explain how? I'm going to use an example. You have a network like TYT. They have over 5 million subscribers, right? Okay. Why is it that I'll get recommendations for TYT videos, which I don't? I'm not a subscriber. No. But I won't get recommendations. And sometimes I don't even get notification alerts for the channels that I'm subscribed to. That doesn't make any sense. Someone explain this to me. I'll give examples. Sometimes I get notifications for Jimmy Dore videos. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'm a part of RBN. Sometimes I get notifications for the RBN stream. Sometimes I don't. That doesn't make any sense. But I'm being recommended TYT. I'm being recommended CNN and MSNBC and Fox News. And I'm not subscribed to those channels, but I'm not getting the notifications for the ones I am subscribed to. That doesn't make any sense.
Not neutrality. That is not a reliable community guideline. That is a private company acting upon certain biases. I would say, just to assure you that that's not misinformation, have a listen to this. A fair analysis of the 100 most subscribed YouTube channels worldwide found that the majority of top news channels on the platform are now not independent.
Boom. 100% correct. So I noticed the change. I think it was about 3 years ago. Yes, it would have been 3 years ago now. It used to be, if I entered Bernie Sanders' name into, and I use that one because at that time, that's what was happening. I entered Bernie Sanders' name into the YouTube search engine, right? You know which videos would come up? It was independent media. It was TYT. It was, Rising, I guess it's still corporate, but it was Rising. It was Secular Talk. It was David Pakman. It was Humanist Report. It was Status Quo. Those were the recommendations. About 3 years ago, I noticed something different. If I entered Bernie Sanders' name into the search engine for YouTube, I wasn't recommended independent media. I was recommended videos by Fox News that had nothing but negative things to say about Bernie Sanders' campaign. You see the difference? And so those other independent channels were pushed so far down in the algorithm. Now I would say they have way more subscribers than like those of us at RBN do. So if they're pushed down, just imagine how much we're pushed down. Think about that.
83 of the top 100 YouTube news channels are corporate media, meaning owned and funded by large companies or conglomerates. You know what that means. You know that means that their shareholders are going to belong to groups like Vanguard and BlackRock, that their advertising is going to come from Big Pharma, Big Food, big tech. You know what that means. It's one centralized organization. For a while, and I still hope it's possibly true, I believe that YouTube was an opportunity for us to openly communicate. If community guidelines are there to protect people, I 100% obviously endorse that. I don't think people should be in danger. And I would even agree that you shouldn't be able to use free speech to hurt people's feelings. I hope we never do that on this channel. We're about consolidation, bringing people together, recognizing we have more in common with one another than ever could separate us, so that we can confront establishment elite power. And I've got the terrible feeling that we're confronting establishment elite power right now. Only 4 of the top 100 top news channels are independently run. While YouTube offers the possibility for independent sites to reach wider audiences, its most subscribed news channels remain largely reflective of the corporate biases of the global media landscape as a whole. Many of your favourite content creators will have been censored. Let us know in the chat and the comments who you've noticed being censored. Here's a really great example. Russia Today were brought down, with journalists like Pulitzer Prize winner Chris Hedges censored. When the conflict between Ukraine and Russia began, all of Russia Today's content was taken down, including Chris Hedges' work, which included interviews with people like Slavoj Žižek and Edward Snowden, people that are providing important voices and insights. You weren't interviewing people that are going, Russia's great, enough like Putin, he should be able to poison whoever he wants, you should be able to invade Ukraine if you want, who cares? That wasn't the content. It's more nuanced than that. It's more complicated than that. Of course you can find legitimate reasons to censor anybody, but ultimately what principles are being followed here? If YouTube has indeed being co-opted by mainstream media corporatism, you can bet your bottom dollar and your top dollar that the principles that are being used here are in the service of establishment elite. Why are independent channels being attacked, censored and brought down, while mainstream media channels are being pushed, highlighted and celebrated? As you know them, we made a video in which we made a mistake when it comes to the
Let's pause there for just a second, because I do want to elaborate on that a little bit. There was a time when if you were doing independent media, it was easier to get to 100,000 subs, especially during election season. So right now, what is this? We have midterms this year. Then we have 2024 coming around. If you were on YouTube during campaign season, during election cycle, you could get to 100K like that. And I've talked to people about this before. I talked to Kim Iverson about this before, and she talked about how quickly like she grew. Now you see the difference. I think you guys are noticing, like, it's so much harder now. It's so much harder. And so we know we're being suppressed. And I want to show you an example of that in just a second, because I want to show you how it works. But typically during like an election cycle, campaign season, whether it's midterms or there's a presidential election, we should really, and I appreciate all the views that I get, by the way, and all of you guys, of course. But if this was like 3.5 years ago, RBN, we would already be at 100,000 subs. I kid you not. We'd already be there. You can see the difference. You can see the shift with the algorithm. And sometimes the algorithm just changes at the drop of a dime, and like you have to adjust, right? It used to be that uploading these short news clips worked really well for the algorithm. That don't work so well for the algorithm anymore unless you already had a large following to begin with. So for those of us that were newer coming into the space, we realized that was something we noticed, that live streams work better for the algorithm. That's why we live stream all the time. Plus, I like to talk to you guys, So this is something to think about. It changes. It can change again next year. I don't know what's going to happen. They can do whatever they want.
Made another video apologizing for that mistake. I would have thought that YouTube would have seen the apology as addressing the problem, but that's not how they saw it. They removed the original video, saying it violates YouTube's community guidelines pertaining to COVID-19's medical misinformation. As a result, a strike has been applied to the channel, which has used our channel's lifetime warning. That's it, for a lifetime, one warning. Doesn't that sound like the language of tyranny to you? You get one warning. According to YouTube, the next time your content is found to violate the community guidelines, like it's coming from like a little old lady and someone that works in, I've been in this community making sipping whiskey que since I was a boy. I started YouTube with just using a wooden internet with my dad. We whittled an internet using sticks.
Not only are the vaccines for those folks, thousands of them, keeping those people from getting sick from COVID themselves, those vaccines are also.
Oh, let's skip her. I really don't like that woman.
Let me know in the comments if you go, that's good, reliable information from MSNBC. Like, subscribe, spread that around.
If you are not infected, you can't give it to anybody else.
Look at the confidence of that. We said, oh, look, it appears on the NIH website. It really does. Have a look for yourself. That's what it looks like. I hope that doesn't get us banned again. But that is, look at the confidence of Rachel Maddow. Again, I know some of you don't like Rachel Maddow and have got political reasons for that. That's not my view. I think Rachel Maddow is a lovely person, as far as I know. That, though, is misinformation, isn't it?
What this means is.
And here's the thing, like, you can be, I'm gonna skip her again. That's the thing, like, you can be a cool person. Like, you ever met someone, like, as a person, you like them, but you don't like working with them, or you just don't like their work. You don't like, you know, those things can be, two things can be true at the same time, right? But I think that, you know, I always point back to Russiagate with Rachel Maddow because she heavily focused on that. And that got us nowhere, right? Got us nowhere. Huge shout out here to Black Freud for the super chat. Thank you so much. How about a class action lawsuit to challenge the discrimination against independent media? What is more important in this country? Human rights or private property? Let's find out. Stay strong, Sabby. You know what, Black Freud? That is actually a good idea. I'd have to look over like the policy with YouTube again. I'd have to read over it. But I think that's a good idea. Because if I remember correctly, I think YouTube says like in their policy that technically we don't own our content. Like they own it. So it's just, yeah. But that's a good point, Black Freud. And I think I missed one. Thank you for the super chat, Stephen R. Thanks for being Sabby, Sabs, and Sabrina. Thank you so much for that, Stephen. You know, it's interesting too. Like there's Sabrina and there's Sabby. They're different sometimes. One has a little bit more fire and passion, and the other one's a little bit more, I guess, professional in a way.
Guidelines, that lovely old community of little old ladies and people from all around the world, all holding hands, wearing national dress of their different countries. Why is that video still up? Isn't that misinformation? What do you think in your community? What do you think on your independent news channel? Why are certain channels being persecuted for violations and others not? What is the bias that's at play here?
Instead of the virus being able to hop.
All right, and we're going to end with her. Sorry, Rachel, I can't. But those are all good points. And I think like, I don't know, like I said, the fact that they came after him and he has over 5 million subs, like that was concerning for me. And I first heard about this on his Twitter page. He posted and I was like, wait, what? So stay strong, Russell Brand. But like I said, he is on Rumble. He is going to be doing streams over there first. So if you want to, you know, get that content first, you need to follow him on Rumble. And I tell all of you, if you're not signed up for these other platforms, please sign up for those other platforms. Always good thing to do. So that's his site there. Summer says Elon Musk will be on Russell's live show next Wednesday. Oh, that should be interesting. Notori goes, hope y'all are doing that too, so y'all not shut down. Yeah, we're on all those other platforms as well. Guy, if Rumble starts to cut into YouTube profits, Google and YouTube will buy a controlling interest. I worry about that too. Hopefully, Rumble and Rockfin and Odyssey will not go that way. Hopefully. Juliet, these power plays sure turn any sane person socialist. Right? Dana, it becomes self-censorship. Exactly. Bad cookies. I got a notification for an RBN video at 3 in the morning once. No lie. You guys see how this works sometimes? One time I got a notification for a live stream after they had already been live for an hour. Explain that. James says Pac-Man and TYT are paid opposition. Yeah, they have sponsors too. And they have a different message. You know, they're a little bit more in the duopoly, like, especially David Pac-Man. They're a little bit more in the duopoly, so they're going to get a pass. Bill Bradley, some states have passed laws prohibiting social media from censoring. One court struck the law down, an appellate court upheld it, and now it will likely go to SCOTUS. Oh, that's good news. I didn't know about that, Bill. Thanks so much for that. I'll take that comment on Rockfin. Whee! All right. Thank you so much for the tip on Rockfin. Skip. Be careful of Patreon too. Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. I know people that have also been removed from Patreon. Thank you for this tip as well, Roger. I've been saying what Black Freud has said for the past 2 years. You all can prove injuries so you have standing. I have been suggesting this on chats of different shows for the longest. You know what gives you the biggest standing in court? The CEO's own interview on 60 Minutes when she said she's trying to push you guys off YouTube because of the mass 2017 reporting where advertisers pulled their ads due to mass reporting. Interesting. That's good to know, Roger. Thank you so much for that. We're going to get into our final story here. But yeah, guys, go support Russell Brand over at Rumble. Okay. That's where he'll be primarily. So go check him out over there. And he's going to be live on there too. So that's even cooler. We're getting into our final story. And this is actually going to lead into the call-in discussion tonight. And this is hot. So I definitely want to hear your voices on call-in about this tonight. This is in reference to Jamaal Bowman. Something happened. Jamaal Bowman was called out during a meeting, and the gentleman who did that, his name was Jose Vega, and I'm incredibly proud of what Jose did because he is actually, this is him holding his politicians accountable, whether they're a progressive politician, whether they're conservative, whether they're neoliberal, whatever. He's holding him accountable. And this is what all of us should be doing. And Eric was actually the one that pointed this out before. When they have these free town halls and they come back into your district, usually they're in the evenings because they assume everybody's off work at that time. They don't think about the fact that some people work in third shift, but whatever. Usually these are in the evenings. You can see, I believe I usually find out about these via email, but if you follow like your city or your state's site, particularly your county as well, you'll hear about these announcements that a certain representative of your district is going to be holding a meeting or whatever. If you have the opportunity to go to those meetings, they're usually free. Definitely do so that you can voice your opinion and hold them accountable. This is one way that you can do that. You put them on blast in front of their constituents. And since you are one of their constituents, yes, you have a lot of standing. You have a lot to say. And he did that. So I want to give him kudos for that. Shout out to Jose. And I'm going to play this video. And I want you to hear what Jose has to say. And then there's something else I want to show you after this to go along with that as well. So again, shout out to Jose. And go ahead and hit that like button, guys. That helps me with the algorithm. Let's hear what Jose had to say.
Do more on climate. We could do more on lowering prescription drug costs. We could do more on gun control. We could do more with regard to the Black agenda. We can do more.
Congressman, you're a hypocrite because you are funding neo-Nazis in Ukraine. They are wearing the they are wearing the black sun symbol, the same symbol that the Buffalo shooter used, the same symbol that the person who almost killed the vice president in Argentina used.
Thank you so
say you
much.
want to advance the black cause, but you are funding the same people who kill in the name of white supremacy.
This is the foundation.
For the Bronx?
This is the foundation of our democracy, freedom of speech.
You choose to fund Nazis.
Stick around and I will have a conversation with you right after the end, but let me get to the conclusion. Stick around. I promise. I got you. The foundation of our democracy is freedom of speech. Freedom of speech. So we appreciate that, and brother, I will talk to you at the end.
I want to point out something in this clip here. We're going to pause in between because I want you to watch the facial expressions of some of the elders sitting in the front. And I want to make a point with this. Here we go.
We could do more on climate. We could do more on lowering prescription drug costs. We could do more on gun control. We could do more with regard to the Black agenda. We can. There's always what we can do more of. We can do this, we can do that, but they don't. They don't. We're always last. And when they do give us something, it's a little bit, it's just the crumbs. Just enough so they can say, come back and vote for me again. can do more.
Congressman, you're a hypocrite because you are funding neo-Nazis in Ukraine.
Where's the lie? Where's the lie? Look at the expression on Jamaal Bowman's face. Look at him. I can't believe this mofo just called me out in front of all these people. I can't believe. Look at him. What can he say? Can he refute that? No, it's true. It's true. This is how you give a fair critique, because this isn't an opinion. Jose isn't yelling out in front of the crowd about an opinion that he has. Jose is yelling out in front of the crowd about something that's a fact. So what can Jamaal Bowman say? Can he push back on that? No, he can't, because that's something that he actually did. That's important. You hit them with the facts. You hit them with the receipts. Can't push back on that.
They are wearing the black sun symbol, the same symbol that the Buffalo shooter used, the same symbol that the person who almost killed the vice president in Argentina used.
Thank you so much.
Again, where's the lie? What can Jamaal Bowman say to that? Can he say, sit down, that's not true? No, it's true. So that was very smart of Jose. Very smart.
You want to advance the black cause, but you are funding the same people who kill in the name of white supremacy.
This is the foundation.
For the Bronx.
Excellent. Very, very well said. He said, you say you want to fund and support the black cause, right? But you voted to fund the same people that actually are the oppressors. How does that make any sense? You voted to give money to them instead of giving money to black people, people in the Bronx. He had every right to say what he did. He said, where's the $50 billion for the Bronx? That's a good question. Where is it? Where is it? Look at the expressions on their face. This gentleman right here, notice how he looks kind of surprised. Look at who's in the front. See, this is something that I've pointed out before in reference to the political space that we have in this country. A lot of times when these politicians have these meetings, who is usually in the audience? It's usually older people. You can see the same thing if you go to a town hall that Jim Clyburn does, by the way. Usually not many younger people there. It's usually older people. They're believing this lie that Jamaal Bowman has been telling them. They really think this gentleman here, his facial expression, he really thinks Jamaal Bowman's doing the best that he can. So when this gentleman stands up and makes this statement, he's just like, what is happening? What? He's surprised. He may not even heard that until that night. He may not have heard that opinion about the funding for Ukraine until that meeting that night, especially if he's only been watching mainstream media. And let's be real, most older people, my parents included, only will watch mainstream media. So he is shocked. You see this? Look at who's in the front. There you got Hakeem Jeffries sitting up here at the table. We're going to call him out in just a second, though. But this needed to be said.
This is the foundation of our democracy, freedom of speech.
You choose to fund Nazis.
Stick around and I will have a conversation with you right after the end, but let me get to the conclusion. Stick around. I promise. I got you. The foundation of our democracy is freedom of speech. Freedom of speech. So we appreciate that, and brother, I will talk to you at the end.
And you want to know why they couldn't push back on that? Because they know it's true. You want to know why Hakeem Jeffries in particular did not push back on that? Because he definitely knows it's true. In fact, we're going to get into that because this thread goes on. Let's dive into it. So that was Jose talking about how he confronted Jamaal Bowman. Let's go on. He goes on to say, ironically, the other congressman who was present, Hakeem Jeffries, also knows about the Nazis in Ukraine because he wrote a letter about it to Congress. What? How many of you knew that? How many of you knew that before tonight? Or if you saw this tweet before tonight's show, how many of you knew that? Because I didn't know that. Let's go on. He goes on to say, the letter that Hakeem Jeffries wrote has been taken down from the announcement page. I need help retrieving it. Now, he's right. If you go here and you click on that page, because I did this. What the? Dude, go away. It says click here to get the letter. When you click here, wait for it. Nothing happens, right? But don't worry about it because I found that letter. Now we're going to get into this because this is something that I want everyone to see. And we're going to talk about this tonight on Call In. Now, there are a couple of things I want to point out on this letter I want you to pay attention to. This letter came from Ro Khanna's office. You see this? Okay. This letter is dated April 23rd, 2018. Years before Russia invaded. Let's go on. I got to read this to you. Now, this says the Honorable John Sullivan. Dear Deputy Secretary Sullivan. I'm going to zoom in because the text is a little, wee. Can it fit? Yeah. Because I want everybody to see this. We write to express our dismay about recent reports of state-sponsored, I got to be careful saying that, distortion and denial taking place in Europe, particularly Poland and Ukraine. These developments are unacceptable, especially given today's global surge of anti-Semitism. We urge you to join us and human rights organizations in standing against anti-Semitism, xenophobia, and all forms of intolerance by calling the Polish and Ukrainian governments to unequivocally reject, I got to be careful saying that on here, but you guys see the word, distortion, and the honoring of Nazi collaborators and fully prosecute anti-Semitic crimes. Again, I want to remind you, this letter was written 2018. Let's jump down here. While the legal questions and historical context of Ukraine and Poland differ, developments in both countries are a cause for concern. You see that? You hear that? Where do you see who signed this letter? Now it goes on. Earlier this year, Warsaw passed a law making it a criminal offense to state that Poland participated in the H. The law, which was rightfully criticized by the U.S. State Department, the Israeli government, and others, was accompanied by a surge of anti-Semitic remarks. The Israeli embassy in Warsaw reported being flooded by anti-Semitic vitriol, while members of the Polish Jewish community expressed concern at rising tensions in the wake of the law. Now, it goes on to say more about Poland, but I want you to see what they say here about Ukraine. Ukraine's 2015 memory laws went even further by glorifying Nazi collaborators and making it a criminal offense to deny their heroism. I can't highlight it because it's a thing. You guys see this? Ukraine's 2015 memory laws went even further by glorifying Nazi collaborators and making it a criminal offense to deny their heroism. However, unlike the Polish law, this move by the government in Kyiv has received little to no public response from the United States. The groups and individuals extolled by Ukraine, including Nazi collaborators, Stepan Bandera, Roman Shuklik, I can't pronounce his last name, sorry, and the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists, as well as the Ukrainian Insurgent Army. The paramilitaries and individuals in some case collaborated with the Nazi and bear responsibility for the murder of thousands of Jews, Poles, and other ethnic minorities between 1941 and 1945. In particularly troubling that much of Nazi glorification in Ukraine is government sponsored. Examples include the 2017 pro-UPA campaign conducted by the Ukrainian Institute of National Memory, the naming of streets after Bandera and Shuklik by the Kyiv City Council. And it goes on. There's more. State-sponsored revisionism in Ukraine is accompanied by other forms of anti-Semitism, as Israel's Department of Diaspora Affairs pointed out in its annual report on anti-Semitism. The whitewashing of these Ukrainian heroes has coincided with the increasing incidence of anti-Semitism across Ukraine. So, that being said, why are all these politicians now today trying to pretend like this is not a problem? Why are they trying to pretend like, oh, it's only just a small portion of them that are like Nazis or whatever? Do you see this letter? Let's go on. Let's go on. Now, someone said my voice is, can you guys, I can hear myself just fine. Let me see. Yeah, I can hear myself just fine. Whoops, I just echoed. Okay, now we're going to go on. Okay, thanks, Eric. There's more to this. This portion right here. This is a plea. As members of the U.S. Congress, we have steadfastly supported Poland and Ukraine's quest to build democratic nations. However, we are deeply concerned that the rise of anti-Semitism and the denial of the past will scheme these countries, democratic development, and prevent Poland and Ukraine from becoming free and open societies for all their citizens, Jewish and non-Jewish alike. The development in these two countries, while particularly egregious, must also be taken in the context of a rise in glorification of the H-era officials throughout Europe, including Hungary, Slovakia, Romania, and the Baltic states. This is a troubling trend that must elicit a strong response from our government. And there was no strong response. Therefore, we respectfully request that you respond to our serious concerns with a detailed description of what actions the State Department is taking to work with the Polish and the Ukrainian governments and other governments in the region to combat the rise of anti-Semitism and the H denial and distortion. This letter, and it goes on, look who signed this letter. First person on the list is Ro Khanna. There's more people. I'll point out some of the names that you may know. I'll scroll down slowly so you can see here. There's Pramila Jayapal, Jamie Raskin. Let's go on. Eleanor Holmes, James McGovern. You see this? There's Ted Lieu. He's the weakest of the progressives on the Progressive Caucus. Even he signed it. And going on, Yvette Clarke, Sean Patrick Maloney, Sheila Jackson Lee, Tulsi Gabbard, Debbie Wasserman Schultz. You guys see this? And there is Hakeem Jeffries. That's why I told you that Hakeem Jeffries knew about it. That's why he didn't say anything when Jose called out Jamaal Bowman and Hakeem Jeffries was sitting right there at the table with them. That's why he didn't say, what could he say? He already knew. He knew back in 2018 when he signed this letter. And there's a couple other people here. Barbara Lee, Matt Gaetz signed this letter. Isn't this something? So, and I believe that's the end there. You see that? Marcia Fudge. So I just want to remind you again that this letter was written April 23rd, 2018. If any of those politicians are your representative, I highly recommend that you call their office or you email their office and ask them about this letter. Those same people knew about this in 2018. They were so concerned to the point where they decided to write a letter and sign it about the anti-Semitism. They were that concerned about it. But all of those people who were still present, not Tulsi, she's not a member anymore, but all those people who are still present, all the Democrats anyway, they all have voted to send more money to Ukraine, knowing what they knew back then. And the next person who interviews Ro Khanna, if you see this live stream, the next person who interviews Ro Khanna, ask him about this letter. Because I wish I would have known about this before I interviewed him, because I would have asked him about this letter. So there you go. So all of them pretending like the Nazi issue isn't a real issue. All of them that have made these excuses on mainstream media saying, oh, it's only a very small percentage. If that were the case, then why did they feel the need to tell the U.S. government to intervene? Why? Why? Now do you believe me when I tell you this is all a game? I don't know what to say. I wanted to say, so we're going to talk about that tonight on Call In. If you're in Hakeem Jeffries' district, definitely ask him, what's up with this letter? I don't know. I'm going to talk about this on Call In. And then I did want to show you that search really quick because I did promise you guys I would show you how we're pushed down in the algorithm. So I did this test with Nick. Let me share my screen. This will take like 2 seconds. It's pretty quick. This is how I know we're suppressed in the algorithm. Watch this. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger for you guys. Whee! All right. We're going to do a search for Nick. Right? So I'm going to put in Nick's name. We're going to search. All right. Watch this. Now, I typed in Nick's full name, Nick Cruz. Now, what should happen is any video that has his name in the title, those videos should appear first. Notice, Bad Faith appears first, but that's only because that video posted today. When I did this yesterday, that did not work because that video wasn't posted. So that video posted today, right? That's good. That's independent media. Here's the problem. As you scroll down, I'm going to show you how long it takes for you to get to RBN, which is Nick Cruz's channel. That's all of us, right? So you see all this stuff. You'll see the other Nicholas Cruz, which isn't even the way that his name is spelled. See what all comes first? This is all corporate media. Look. More corporate media. I'm still scrolling. I don't know how far down. Okay. Then we have The Hill when Nick appeared on Rising. Again, that's corporate media. You see what I'm saying? Again, we have not reached RBN yet. Let's keep going. Corporate. Now we get to RB. You have to scroll all the way down to get to RBN. Now look at the video. The title is Nick Cruz versus Destiny Debate. Did not put Nick Cruz's name in the search engine. That video where he debated Destiny, which has over 7,000 views, and that's on our RBN channel. That video should have appeared at least in the top 3 when you searched for his name. That's how I know we're suppressed. You see what I'm saying? That's how you know. That don't make no sense. That's his name, the correct spelling and everything. This video should have been all the way, how far we had to go up? All the way up here. It should have been all the way up at the top. That's how it works. And someone mentioned in the chat, Sabby sign out, it'll be worse. That's true. I was signed in. So if I'm signed out, it's probably even worse. That's how they do it. They push us down, independent media down, and they push corporate media up. All right, Eric, you're going to come on for a second? Okay, yeah. Alrighty.
Sure. All right. How's everybody doing on this almost Friday? Sabby's taking a little break, and then she's going to be doing the call-in show. You can switch over to call-in either by doing the app or doing the or clicking on the link that we're going to give you. Let's see, there's the link. It should also be the pin chat, or you can do it on your cell phone. Why am I small? All right, there we go. As you notice, my background, everything's a little different because I am actually in Canada for a little visit for a few days. And let's see what we got for some chats here. It's from Summer Rose. Love independent media found Jimmy through Cedar and found Sabby through Jimmy. Yeah, I think we've a lot of us have had a similar journey to that, and some of us who have been even watching and doing this stuff for a while, we'll go back to even like back when MSNBC was the only thing left you could watch, and you kind of, we're glad we all got here, right? From the bad cookies. When I met my congressman back in '06, I asked him a question. He asked, "Do you vote?" I said, "No." His response, "Then I don't care what you have to say or think." It was enlightening. Yeah, that's definitely, you know what they want from us. They don't want our opinions. They want our votes and our cash, if we'll give them that. Let's see, talking about how the retirees have more time for meetings. Yep, they can go there and and talking about like the algorithms on YouTube and whatnot. I mean, they even admit that they tweak their algorithms for what they quote, what they call legacy media, and that's one of the real systemic changes we can do in all this stuff is to make the algorithms transparent, to make them something that everyone can inspect and audit, and of course it's not. It's all opaque. It's all private, which is a big part of the problem. We got from Lawrence Johnson, who is a Sabby member. Jamaal telling Jose to shut up. We'll talk later, maybe, when it won't embarrass me. I love that thing while they're basically apparently grabbing the guy and forcing him out, and Jamaal's on stage extorting free speech. It's kind of hilarious. From Uni 2020, hi Sabby, I just watched a vid from Paul J, and he ended his vid with an old film made about American Nazis. Look up Marshall Curry's film, A Night at the Garden. Scat sheet. And thanks for that, Uni. And we just had this question about Collinge, which will be coming up shortly with our Sabby Sabs, or our Sabrina, whichever you prefer. Is Sabby limiting call-in times for callers? As far as I know at this point, we're not doing that. We try to, Sabby actually, she runs that. I don't even run that at all, but she tries to give everybody their say. And I know sometimes the chat and call-in gets a little bit impatient sometimes with certain callers, but we have a good time there. All right, let's see. I like this one. Is Trudeau as bad as I've heard up in Canada? You'll get varying opinions, but I certainly think he's bad. The words authoritarian goon kind of come to mind, but one of the things I was also thinking is that there was this whole concept about Trump getting elected and the politics, and about the idea of like the next president may be like Trump, but would be even a more able Trump, and so that's part of the reasons why we need better candidates. And it was an argument for Bernie and all this stuff, and they called him they'd say the president down the line might be President WTT, president worse than Trump. And I know. I think in some ways you can make an argument we kind of got that in some ways in Biden. I mean, we got more war, we've got inflation, we got a lot of stuff going on. So I don't know, that was a thing that just I was thinking of. All right, one other thing I wanted to highlight. Let me see if I can share this. I had just seen the latest Matt Taibbi article that came down the pike, and let's throw that up here. That's sharing, right? Let's see. Yeah. About the, let me make that larger. Let me double check how the share we go. You're saying, yeah, the Washington Post dabbles in Orwell. In a scrubbed piece about Edward Snowden, the Bezos Post offers a preview of how history will be rewritten. And it talks about this story in Washington Post about Edward Snowden, and the thing pushing this is that apparently Putin or Russia granted him official citizenship. And of course, that's being spun now hilariously as, that means he was doing it for Russia, which is, just ridiculous. As Matt points out in the article, I mean, Russia had nothing to do with any of this or any of his plans. And he wouldn't even have gone to Russia, except that, the U.S. took his passport and stranded him there. But what Taibbi is really hitting on this is how you have these different versions of the article, and you have and you have talking about how it, describing him as a former security consultant who leaked top secret information, and he says, Snowden is America's most famous revealer of secrets, and the way he's been talked about has evolved to an extreme degree. And Taibbi talks about how when this first came out, I mean, they won like Pulitzer Prizes, and the Washington Post was part of that, and they were bragging about it. And then now when they write this article, like the article goes through revisions and edits. One of the most hilarious parts, I mean, you can see it here, way back when they were talking about how they were so honored to win the prize, and now it's, Putin grants citizenship to this guy Snowden. And then so then at one point they had this, and apparently this article is like being edited all over repeatedly. And so at one point it had that he did an immense public service by exposing mass surveillance, and then that part was just edited out. And I'll just finish with the way Taibbi finishes. The object of this propaganda game is to stamp out any space for revealers of secrets, even intellectual space, which means even former partners have to turn on them, especially eventually. Congratulations, Washington Post, for getting there so promptly. All right. So I gave him a bit of Taibbi.
I got a note from a thing from his Substack earlier too, that they censored one of his things too. I just didn't get it.
Substack censored or YouTube?
I think it was YouTube. I have to go back through it. I might be able to talk about it tomorrow. Yeah, because I don't have enough time.
Substack doesn't seem to be censoring anybody.
Yeah, no, I don't think it was. I think it was YouTube, but I have to go back through it and read it. But I did forget to shout this out. I can't forget to do this. Guys, October 8th, along with the Assange rally, there's also going to be a women's march in DC as well. The march starts at 11 a.m. at Folger Park. So if those of you are interested in attending that, just wanted to shout that out. Women's March, October 8th in DC. And that is at 11 o'clock at Folger Park. So two big events, two big rallies going on, the Women's March and the Assange event. I'll be at the Assange one. I can't go to both because of the timing. But yeah, if you can come to one of those, you're in the area, check it out.
Now we'll be about to leave.
Yep.
Separately, but heading there.
I will be heading out.
See you in Collinge.
All right, guys. That is it. We are heading over to Call-In again. We are going to discuss that last story there, the Ukraine letter revealed. A letter sent from Rokana's office in 2018 has been revealed. That letter was warning about the rise of Nazis in Poland and Ukraine, yet every politician who signed that letter is supporting Ukraine. They don't even mention that letter. And I want to hear your thoughts tonight. Guys, I'm doing pretty good on Call-In. I'm almost at 1,000 subs, which is my goal. So shout out to all of you that have subscribed to me over there. The link is pinned to the top of the chat. So catch me over there. I am heading out, guys. You know how we do this. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.